Hello, Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound, and healthy. And it's just one day to go for some of us for Ramzan, and for some of us, it's actually going to be tomorrow. And for those of you who begin fasting tomorrow, Ramadan Mubarak. And it's been raining. It's been raining off and on for a week. I think this is technically what we call in our language Jumerat ki jhadi. Yeah. This is basically, normally this happens in monsoon where it starts raining on a Thursday and then it rains throughout the week till the next Thursday. But although it actually did begin raining last week on Thursday, but the rains are expected to go on till Friday. So let's see, because it's been raining all week, as I said, off and on, and it rained all night, and it rained throughout the wee hours, till dawn. And this is how it mostly goes on. It rains constantly throughout the night with little breaks, and then throughout the day you have rain showers, light rain, just off and on and off and on. So all in all, it's very good, actually. I think it's a very good thing, because usually these rains, they mark the change in weather, the change in season, and they're very much needed, because when you don't have rain between seasons, then that's when people start getting sick a lot. So I think this time it's been pretty blessed. But again, as we know, what could seem as blessings to some people can become some sort of a problem for others. So when it rains like this, then obviously the first thing would come to mind is to pray that it remains a blessing for everybody involved, and that nobody gets disturbed, nobody gets inconvenienced, nobody gets flooded, in other words. Because minor floods do occur. I mean, there are many areas that are a bit lower. So there are certain areas in every city that are built a bit lower. So when it rains, then those areas tend to get a bit of they sometimes tend to get lightly flooded, and they have to wait about 24 hours or so for it to all go down. Sometimes they get flash flooded. That's pretty dangerous, as you know. So, I mean, there are always areas that do get to bear the brunt of constant rains or of heavy rains. So it doesn't matter if it's light rain showers, as long as they're going on every day, day in and day out, and throughout the night, then that can also create a problem. So, as I said, all we can do is pray that it remains blessed for everyone, all and sundry, everyone concerned. And this Ramzan, what are the few reminders that we have to remind ourselves? Once again, please remember that even the non-Muslim countries have learned to respect the month of Ramzan. They respect the fact that you're fasting, and they try not to eat in front of you. So the modern, very modern Muslims that suddenly have come up, the liberal, so-called pseudo-liberals, I call them, who think that, oh, let's just eat because we're not fasting, so let's just eat in public spaces. Yeah, that's not just bad manners, but that is considered highly offensive. And this is something, as I said, that even the non-Muslims recognize. I mean, the fact that they literally feel for you that, oh, you can't eat, you're fasting, I'm sorry, I'm not going to eat in front of you. And yet you, being Muslims, you actually act like one would expect non-Muslims to do. That is, I think, highly concerning, highly offensive, especially because you are a Muslim and you're doing this. That just shows that, you are literally festing with the devil. Okay. Yes, believe it or not, because I'm likening it to it, because I've seen too many instances of people literally having fun doing this, you know, or there are people who just don't care. Listen, if you don't care, that's your problem. But you need to have, again, basic, as I said, the problem is that now the new generation haven't been taught basic manners. And the fault is the parents and the schools. Schools think that, oh, it's not our job to teach them manners, but we want to take hundreds and thousands of rupees from the parents to teach the children jack shit. And parents seem to think that, oh, we don't have time to teach them manners. So, they'll learn it anyway. No, they don't learn it anyway. Before, the schools and parents, they both used to work together to teach children manners. I remember that when we were in school, we had character building classes, believe it or not. I haven't seen that in any school now, in most of the schools. Similarly, parents and schools worked together to teach children on how to take care of their books. This was something that both were the teachers and parents were both very active in it. Literally in class, your teachers would say, okay, bring out your copies, bring out your textbooks, and let's start covering them. And then when you go home, your parents are like, bring out your copies and bring out your textbooks, and let's see which you haven't yet covered. And we would cover them. We would cover them with brown paper, we'd cover them with, protective layers, and then we would put our names, and that actually taught you how to treat your things. As you know, there's a hadith that I really love because it is very close to my heart. I mean, this is how I truly believe myself. And when I saw that the Prophet believed in this thing too, I was like, yes, I'm on the right track. And that is, he said that the way you treat non living things tells it tells a lot about your character. It shows how you would treat living things. So it's true. The way you treat your non living things is a very big reflection on how you would treat living things and human beings. If you're very sensitive towards something that has no life, it means you're going to be very sensitive, very compassionate, very empathetic towards things that do have life. I know there are people who beg to differ, but that's a whole different story. That's a different. But we're talking about generally. Generally, if you have a lot of compassion, it translates. And one of the ways you can teach empathy and compassion and sensitivity and care is when you teach children how to care about their things. You teach them how to care about their books. That also tells it tells them, the kids, that education, respect for books. We're supposed to respect books. We're supposed to respect knowledge. So when you're teaching your children to respect their books, to respect the tools that they have that help them gain knowledge, it teaches them to respect knowledge. The reason why knowledge is no longer respected nowadays, by children especially, is because, first of all, teachers are not even giving that knowledge. The impartation, of knowledge is non-existent in schools now. Parents also can't be bothered. And yet, the whole society, parents and the whole society and the whole country somehow expect, they literally expect that the children should just grow up and become, geniuses, and they should be, amazing, great individuals of great character. No, that's not how it happens. As they say, it takes a village to bring up a kid. It literally does. If the schools are going to take money to shirk from their jobs, and if parents are already shirking from their jobs, then what kind of children are you bringing up? So this Ramzan is, as we keep on and on saying, that Ramzan is a sort of a restart. It's a chance at restart. It's where you can just press that restart button and start all over again. It doesn't just start all over again in the form of learning to curb your temptations regarding food, but it's about your temptations regarding everything in life. And it's also about resetting that button on learning discipline, learning about, knowledge. Again, throughout Ramzan, it's all about knowledge. Why are you going through the Quran once again? Why are you going through your religion, studying it all over again? Why? You're supposed to study it. You're supposed to observe it. You're supposed to ponder. You're supposed to reflect. And I'm sorry about the background noise, but as always, it's dead quiet. But the minute I pick up the mic, everybody decides to now suddenly come to life. Anyway, point being, during Ramzan, we have the chance to restart, to unlearn, relearn. You understand? And I think we can utilize that towards our kids too. The reason why it's important for children also, especially from 12-year-olds onwards, why Ramzan is an obligation, why fasting is an obligation for them too. You can't just say, oh, they're kids, and no, listen. Where they're kids, they're kids. But where it, as we all know, it is a common sense now, although common sense is very uncommon nowadays. But let me tell you, this is common sense that, by the age of 8, your child's formation, the basic formation of your child's characteristics and personality and habits are formed. This is why I've always told young mothers that, whatever it is that you want your child to be in the future, whatever habits, personality traits you want ingrained in your child, you need to do it before they reach 8. By the time they hit 8, they are basically already formed. Okay. So if by 8 your child's characteristics and personality traits and habits and everything is already formed, then what makes you think they're too young to start fasting or praying at age 12? Age 12 is literally pre-puberty. Okay, for girls, age 12 literally is hitting puberty. At 12, they hit puberty. For boys, it is literally prepubescent time. Okay, it's a prepubescent period for them. So yeah, your brains are fine. Okay, you need to start praying, you need to start fasting. Prayer actually starts at 7, fasting starts at 12. So there you are. Habit formation, discipline, organization, and again, learning to unlearn, learning to redo, learning to learn. This is what Ramzan is all about. Why would you deprive your kids of that? Why wouldn't you let them understand that they have this chance every year in life to take it slow, to start all over again, to try to fix their mistakes, to try to fix their bad habits, that this is an ongoing struggle. This is an ongoing struggle in our daily lives, but we actually are lucky enough to have a month that we can focus on it. So that, I think, is essential for us, as responsible adults, to help our children realize that. And then again, as I said before, so we need it all comes down to manners. It comes down to consideration for others, which is essentially hukukul ibad. Hukukul ibad is consideration for others. Anything and everything that inconveniences others to the extent that it can make a problem for them mentally, socially, or generally, it needs to be removed from your daily lives or your activities or your habits. And the fact that we actually have a month every year in our lives to just, hunker down and try to deliberately, consciously focus on doing that. I think we're very lucky. It's true, we are very lucky that we have a designated. Why? Because throughout the year we're supposed to do it, but we can't be bothered, right? Life comes in between, everything comes in between. But the fact that we're forced and designated at one point every year in our lives to know, leave everything, sit down, try this, do this, you need to do this, I think that's an amazing thing that we need to expose our children to, instead of saying, oh, they're too young. Especially when young kids love to fast, I think that it's okay to let them to start little, like how parents usually do. That's fine. But when they hit the right age, when they're supposed to fast, then make them fast. Let them fast. Don't try to intervene or interfere. Don't try to make excuses. It's true that, yes, for some people it still takes time, and it's okay. I mean, you can't force anybody to do anything, so you can't force your children to fast. But again, it is something that becomes a part of your habit. It becomes a part of your habit. I mean, Ramzan, everybody wants to fast, everybody's fasting, kids want to fast. Remember, your children mimic you, right? Literally, our children are like sponges, they soak in everything. And they mimic everything that's around them. And who do they mimic the most? Their parents, their family. Okay? So if the parents are fasting regularly, then the children will fast. And as I said before, the children have no problem fasting. It's usually the parents that break that. They are the ones that break that chain. They are the ones that break that, that habit. When in between they're like, oh, no, no, you're too young. No, let them fast. If they can do it, let them do it. If they're too young and they're trying to fast, as I said, our parents usually tend to do this, that they're like, okay, let them do a sort of a half fast. And, it's fine. It's fine because you're basically building the stamina. You're letting them build the habit or the stamina for it, and you let them fast for as many minutes or hours as they want to because it's not yet an obligation on them. That helps them to start fasting properly when it is the time for them to fast as an obligation. As I said, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about those parents who deliberately intervene and they do not set an example, or they do not encourage their children to start fasting when it's due. And as I said, that this is just it's weird because now you see that the Western world is, constantly at a very rapid pace. They are learning about these little, you know, characteristics of Islam, and they're converting rapidly towards Islam. Whereas the young generation, the young Muslim generation in many of our post colonial countries, they are literally not practicing Islam. In other words, they have no knowledge of Islam. So regression is key here. In our societies, the problem is this rapid regression, you know, not just religious regression. We're talking about civilizational regression. We're talking about social regression. We're talking about economic regression as well. And we're talking about mental regression, I'm sorry to say. But yes, so the problem is that lack of empathy, lack of consideration for others, lack of mannerisms, lack of knowledge, lack of everything is right now what is going on all over the world, actually, which is again why the people in the West are being forced to look towards an alternative, because they have realized the heights of regression that our civilization has gone to. But unfortunately, in our societies and in our country especially, that is not the case. So I don't know. As we all know, each time, every child is made for the time ahead. We were made for our time. Our children are made for the time ahead. Their children will be made for the time ahead. And you cannot enforce your time. Your time, your traditions, your way of life on them. That is a fact that Islam keeps on and on telling us. But again, what we need to enforce is, morality, values. And obviously, you know what, here too, we can, if we talk about particularly our country, we cannot blame the kids, because who's responsible for all of this? Our government, our so-called government, which is actually an illegal. Now, see how your government is illegal. Your army is using, or your government is using the army, and your army is using the government, and both are basically trying to sort of apply a sort of a dictatorship. But they're such cowards that they can't even come up front and say, okay, this is a dictatorship. Just look at the utter cowardice here. And yet they are acting as if it is a dictatorship. Why? Because they keep on and on changing laws, and they're tampering with the constitution, and it's all illegal. They're tampering with the judges, they're tampering with the courts. This is done this is done literally in a dictatorship, and yet they're claiming, no, it's not a dictatorship, but they're doing every single thing that is done in a dictatorship. As I said, they're just cowards. And then, the whole drug abuse thing has been introduced by this very same government, whether they like it or not, but the blame and the responsibility goes to them and to the army again. Because how is it possible that drugs have become so common that children are not even aware of the fact that they're being exposed to drugs? That children are actually safe when they're home, but the minute they start schooling, that's when they get exposed to drugs. How can you get exposed to drugs at school? So obviously, nothing can get through your law enforcement agencies unless they themselves are involved. This is a fact. This is a fact that we have seen. This is a proven fact that we have historical evidence of time and again. Similar is as I always say, nobody can enter your country unless there is somebody in your country who will open the door for them. Nobody can enter your house unless there is somebody in your house who will open the door for them, right? These are facts. If somebody jumps into your house, he still needs somebody who needs to let him in. So you have your government and you have the army that have illegally taken the place of what should have been your legal government, which is now sitting in the opposition, right? And the fact that they have blatantly disregarded public opinion and the public vote and the public mandate, that shows, I mean, that just explains everything. And as I said, you just can't blame your kids for mirroring that, that lack of empathy, that psychopathic trait, So you've got psychopaths basically in the army, and you've got psychopaths in the law enforcement agencies, you've got psychopaths in the government. And as not just our country, as you see, it's in other countries too, you're seeing that where there's this weird sort of a psychopathic movement going on, where you have people who you've not voted for, they're coming on top of you and they are trying to make, and even those that you have voted for thinking that they will make a positive change, they're coming and they're suddenly making all these weird ass decisions that go against the core of your beliefs and your principles. So I think that the world is obviously, as we've always talked again and again, that the world is headed towards its ultimate demise, which is again natural, as we know that this is part of the evolution of the world. Where, I mean, the way I would explain, the world to be is that it is in a constant rebirth and death cycle. It is literally exploding and imploding simultaneously. So literally the world is being born and it is dying at the same time, if anybody can understand that. And I'm sure many people do. This is exactly what our world is. Our world is constantly, being brought back to life, and it is constantly dying. It is constantly being built, and it is constantly being destroyed. And it's doing it, it's not just we who are doing it. This is the world's own cycle. This is the earth's own cycle, So it is basically coming to life and dying simultaneously, all at the same time. And in that, if you understand that, then you would understand that it's obviously very natural and it's according to plan that we are going towards that demise. We are imploding. And so one would argue that, because it's part of the evolution, it's part of the process, it's part of the ongoing implosions, so why even bother? But it's not about why even bother. The thing is that you have to make the best of whatever it is, because that it doesn't mean that because the world is going towards its demise, then you need to stop teaching manners, for example, to your children, or that we need to stop working hard to change ourselves. Or in fact, if anything, we need to work harder, because if anything, this should remind us that, the end is always near. The end is as near as it is far, and it is as far as it is near, right? So the world is constantly ending and it's constantly coming back to life, and it's constantly ending and it's constantly coming back to life. So there are births and there are deaths going on at the same time. And so that means that we have to now work even harder to try to make the best of it, to try to assess this life against the life hereafter, and what we need to do and how we need to cope, and the different ways that we can try to work on making ourselves answerable to God in the next life. isn't it? If anything, this should make it even more important for us, and it should make us realize that we need to explain that importance to our kids. That's all. We're not supposed to force our time and our traditions and our habits onto the kids, no. But we are supposed to enforce the basic the basic laws and rules and regulations that never change through time, and that is morality, which is moral values, right? That is about remembering that there is a life after this, and that is what this whole caboodle that's going on here is supposed to be all about. It's about getting ready for the next life, that these are trials and tribulations, and these are tests, and that there are struggles, and that there are decisions, and then there are choices, and how we need to maneuver through them. I think this is very essential. You know, it is essential that we never forget to teach our children basic social etiquette, manners, and values, because these are regardless of time. Well, this is me signing out. Once again, Ramzan Mubarak to everyone, and I hope that we all manage to have, I mean, especially where I'm concerned, especially because the past few years, to be very honest, as any of you who have listened to my podcast would know, the past 3 years at least, Ramzan to me was not Ramzan. It didn't feel like Ramzan. It didn't have the vibes. It didn't have that feeling. It was as if nobody cared. Although I guess everybody did. I don't know, but it just wasn't in the air. I'm hoping that this Ramzan, although I'm afraid that this Ramzan too, I might not get that. But I'm sure that there are many people who are much luckier than us, who are living in countries where they can get that vibe, they can, get that stimulation, they can get that feeling, they can get that ambiance. So yeah. And for them, I think you're truly blessed. And for us, all I can say is that may God help us through. Maybe this in itself is a test too. So, Ramzan Mubarak to everyone, and may all your dreams come true, and may they all be good for you. Ameen. This is me signing out. Khuda Hafiz.